Well, hello everybody. I'm just today. It's a beautiful day in Colorado. We have had now a couple snow days for my kids from school. All of them were excited today. One, I have four, and one of them, he got the first notice, and so I wake up, I tell him, and he's like, no, because he wants his brothers and his siblings to be with him, and they weren't off yesterday. Then I go to the next one, my daughter, the only girl, and I tell her, you have a snow day, and she says yes, and she goes right back to sleep. And then we're waiting, and the other two boys are really irritated at this point because they have now had there's 2 days of snow where they don't get to stay home. So we're waiting and waiting. I tell them to get dressed, and then like 13 minutes later, the school notifies us that now they have a school day, so a snow day. So all of them now are home, and then the oldest son is like, "Yes, now my brothers are with me." So this is what's happening right here in Colorado. I don't know where you are joining us from. But today I'm really super excited because one of my favorite Leadership with Heart interviews or interviewees is Claude Silver. And she was gracious enough. She's going to be joining us today. And if you don't know about her, she was the inaugural Chief Heart Officer. I've really never heard Chief Heart Officer used in any other organization, and so she may still be the first and the only. And she works at Vayner Media. She's kind of second command to Gary Vaynerchuk, and he thought it important enough to have someone like her in the role right next to him, helping to navigate and maintain the culture that they have there in place and to strengthen it as they go along and they scale. So I'm just really excited to have her on here, and we're going to be talking about some fun stuff too. So hopefully those who are joining, you'll get a chance to kind of sit into the most of this, but keep in mind too, that many of these are also going to be housed inside of LinkedIn. And I'm also including these now on YouTube. So you can go back later and also listen to this and even comment. And if there are questions you have specifically for Claude, I'll make sure to pass those along. But while we're in the show, don't forget to ask questions and let us know where you're from, where are you calling, where are you basically ringing in from or watching in from. And then also, what questions you might have from her or any comments. We want to get that engagement because I will look then periodically throughout my talk with her and see if there are things that she can answer right on the spot. She is pretty powerful. What I love the most about her is the fact that she is so real, so down to earth. She lives heart, absolutely. But when we talk about some of the ways that people might perceive this word heart, we're going to talk through what this might look like actually for both of us, because I think we are 100% aligned in that. So Claude, welcome to the show.
Hello, Heather. Hello, LinkedIn. Great to be here today. I'm in sunny Los Angeles.
So we're like in opposite spectrums here. It's kind of crazy.
I
know. So right now you're just there because you're visiting one of your offices, right?
Yeah, that's right. We've got an office of about 55 people here on this coast, and I like to visit all the offices at least once or twice every quarter and a half. So it's great to be here, and I got out of the New York rain, so I'm into it.
How many offices do you have? I didn't even realize you had that many. I thought you were just in New York. I didn't know you were all over the place.
We have 5. We just opened Singapore up in July, and we've already have 22 people there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Okay. That is serious growth there.
Global advertising agency, you know.
Good point. Well, I remember, I'm trying to think, I read, he probably has had multiple books, I know, but I read one of his books, and that's where I found out about his like family and his business and the wine and all that. And this has been probably some years ago. And I guess he was big then, I'm not sure. But then all of a sudden I started seeing him everywhere. I'm like, wow, that's the guy. I like read his book, and it was about, it's like, Heather, where are you? Where have you been in this world? But that's great that you are, you're aligned and that you're there to kind of keep that focus there. So we'll be talking about some of that, the parallels between the two of you and how you shed some light on the environment there too. So are you have any fun things going on? Any kind of trips coming up that are like kind of unique, or anything you just came back from that was kind of interesting or unique? I'm curious.
Yeah, for Claude Silver or for Claude Silver, the Chief Heart Officer?
Just Claude Silver.
Oh my gosh. My best friend in the world is turning 50 next week, and she and a group of us are going to Turks and Caicos. Have
you ever been there?
No.
I haven't either. That's awesome.
So we are going for a good 5.5 days, and I am, bring it on. Yeah.
You got to make sure, you have to make sure at least you could do a professional one, post like something with the sand or something. We want to live vicariously through you.
Yeah, you get my tattooed feet in the sand.
Oh, that's going to be good.
I'll tag you. Yeah, so we got that going on, and I have a little baby who just turned 1 last Monday.
Oh,
That's pretty unbelievable.
congratulations! That's like a whole milestone just for you.
Oh, yeah, yes. These bags are there for a reason.
We love you, Heather. Love your passion, your work. I'm just looking at different people. Hey, Claude, always ready to soak up some of your wisdom. That's Jennifer Fox on there commenting. Okay, so one of the things I think it would be good to talk about is empathy, this idea of empathy. And I have people who even doubt that empathy exists. And it's hard for me and you too. I consider myself an empath as well. And you describe yourself that way. And I thought, you don't really hear many people say that too much. There are positives, and sometimes they feel like there are downsides to being that type of person, right? Because we feel so deeply. And so we like living into the empathy, but then there are those who try to be empathetic and it isn't real. It isn't deeply felt because they're doing it as a tactic versus as a reality. I'd love to hear just your thoughts on that. Have you ever even known people like that? Have you had discussions about this idea of kind of this real empathy that's true, that really lives inside of us? And then those who they hear us talk about it and they want to emulate it, but it's really not, it's all surface and they're doing it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I firmly believe that empathy is a way of being, and it's almost sometimes difficult to speak about because it is just the being of it. It's just who I am, it's just who you are. And I think because of that, it's easy for me to see where someone is trying their best or kind of like, mailing it in, if you will. I do want to say, I believe, I firmly believe that human beings are out to do their very best and to become magical beings and to help others become magical and thrive. And that said, it might not be in someone's DNA or someone's natural state to be empathetic, i.e., really truly caring about the experience that another is having. And it is, it's beautiful when that comes to life. And I'm experiencing something, the alternative, actually right here and now, where it seems to be something that is more of a facade. People can tell when it's a facade. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to know is really truly interested and or caring and or kind of can put themselves in the back just a little to ensure that person is being treated in a kind and compassionate way. So I think I also think that empathy has now become this incredible buzzword, which is so funny because for so long it's been considered a quote unquote soft skill. It's been a psychological term. It's been a positive psychology term, and here we are really talking about empathy and equating empathy in terms of high performance now.
Yeah, that's a shift, isn't it?
Real shift. It's incredible that we are now equating having strong relational skills as a high performing individual. It's beautiful to me because there's a place for all of us out there to be recognized, not just in terms of IQ, but in terms of EQ. And I think it's been a long time coming.
And what do you think that, because somebody here, Daniel, thanks for asking that question. What would you think the definition of empathy is? What would you describe it as?
I believe that the definition of empathy is the ability to understand cognitively and emotionally what another person's experience is. I don't believe it is putting myself in their shoes. I think that's a little cheap and cheerful. But the ability to both feel and think about what their experience is or has been is what empathy is. And so it's both cognitive and emotional ability. I do think that there are some of us out there that become sponges, and that's not empathy. That's being a real feeler.
Yes.
But I think that when you are a sponge, sometimes you're almost sympathizing and still coming from ego rather than
Mm.
the ability to just hold space for another of whatever it is they're experiencing has nothing to do with you.
Love it, love it. And I think that could be when I'm thinking of a very good friend of mine. He's actually one of the leaders with Heart too. I think that's probably the biggest issue he has with this, with empathy, and it is probably because there's a level of ego involved with some people when they talk about it, where it is more about them and what, and oh, how great I am. I feel you. I feel this, you know, and like it's this idea of putting yourself in the shoes where it's not possible. You're not standing in that person's shoes. And I have probably mistakenly, to be honest, described it that way before too. Part of it is I just can think about the times I know I've been an effective manager of people or leader of teams predominantly because of my desire to meet people where they're at. So this idea of holding space and my desire to truly understand where they're coming from and actually partially feel what they're feeling. And so there are times when I've been able to describe to them what's happening inside of them without them knowing how to describe it and them being completely shocked. Like, how is it that you know that I'm feeling that way when I can't even say it for myself, but that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And yes, it's easy, as I can think of my friend saying, it's easy to say in my mind, I'm just like that. Like, I just have it like that, right? It's not that though. I feel like it's a deep journey. It's a journey. It's a desire to just dive into it with the person and not let like the doorbell ringing, the kids screaming, the emails coming in, like none of that stuff is important at that moment. And I kind of feel like that's the difference. Like I'm still making them the most important person at that time, not me. I kind of feel like that's a big definer of what empathy is. It's like that process of wanting to go deep, wanting to be full, like you talked about when you first got on here. I'm fully present now. Makes a huge difference, doesn't it? Huge difference.
It does. People can feel that, and I think more than anything, people need that. I mean, you need it at times. I need it at times. I think all of us need to feel heard and seen, and that we matter. You know, it's this idea of mattering is something that's really, really on the forefront of my brain these days. More so than, you know, belonging. We understand belonging and how important that is to feel physically and psychologically safe, but then to actually matter, that I am actually needed, necessary in this world, that I mean something, that I do bring something of value. And I don't mean the ego I that I bring. It's that I can bring something. I am of value, and me choosing life and being a hopeful individual in this world is contributing to the collective rather than depleting.
Yes. Yes. I love that. This idea of importance. I try to, sometimes I feel when I'm doing kind of keynotes or speaking or something, and I talk about these issues, I feel like sometimes people are looking for me to give them, you know, like tactics that are really like out of this world, or some kind of complicated, very academic, you know, prescription to bring people to you closer, to endear people to you, to make people want to stay forever, as Gary wants, right? And I'm giving them this idea of how do we make people feel important and cared for and respected and heard, and here's how you do it. And it's like, oh my gosh, so you do it that way? Like, I just have to come in the morning and like say hello to my people. I have to say goodbye at the end of the day and like sit with them and see how their day was going. Like, this is, you know, it's like, it just blows them out. It blows their mind that it's not this academic, prescriptive, weird thing. It is really about heart, right?
Yeah, it ain't rocket science. I think that if we could remind ourselves that we're human and we just are, you know, we commit to kindness. We just commit to kindness. That's it. And by the way, I commit to kindness every day, and I don't always get it right.
So true. I mean, the thing is, I don't have a Leadership with Heart podcast because I'm always full of heart, because I'm always like the person who's always perfect, nonstop, and then I don't have a journey. You and I, who people are thinking that, wow, they're just like, they're great. Look, they're talking about these great things that are soft topics, these topics that really matter. They do, and they matter so deeply to us, but we're not perfect. We're on a journey. We're all trying to get better every day. And so I think that's why both of us share so openly about these things, because we realize that we are all living in our own brokenness, And we're all trying to get together, get through it together. We may be a little bit more enlightened with making sure that we are, putting other humans and people in the forefront. But in the end, we're all human. So we're going to have all the same things.
Yeah. And I think along those lines, Heather, one of the things that you and I know is that to be of service and to walk through whatever your valley of hell is, like that's where some of this openness comes from. I think that we need to be, we have to be willing and courageous and vulnerable to become self-aware. It isn't just a poof, let me put that microchip in my brain and I am self-aware. It takes effort and work, and it takes sometimes crawling on your hands and knees. And so there isn't, and this isn't an HBR article to get there. There's called life.
Oh, it's so true. I think about, I have that TED talk on adversity. And for me, my social awareness, so the awareness of those around me and really wanting to engage with people comes so much from not feeling like someone was taking care of me and paying attention to me when I was young. So I had that in me from a child, and it just kind of, carried itself with me through my entire life. And I was always like, but let me understand you. I want to be there for you because I didn't feel that. So I just deeply want that for others. And it's the reason why I do the work that I do. So it's funny you say that. It's like it's the adversity, it's trauma that actually created this deep desire to want that. So then it might be more natural to people, but it was more about nurture, like basically environment I was in. And I think that sometimes right now, here today, we develop empathy. There are 50-year-old men that develop empathy through like situations that happen, right? So it happens, you get it at different times. But I do believe, like you were saying, that it has so much to do with life, the life that we're living now. It is harder to go deep with people in their pain and all that stuff. If we just don't have much pain, we don't have any challenges, we just live like a rosy life. I would say it would be harder than most. I don't think it's impossible, but it's harder than most if you haven't had those life experiences.
Yeah, or if you're not willing to be vulnerable about them. And that doesn't mean like gush everywhere, just like share. Share.
I love that.
Human to human. Yeah.
So one of the things that obviously with your title being the Chief Heart Officer, and at this point, I think you might be the only one in that role. I'm not sure if there are others who've now done it since you've done it, but when we talk about heart, people often think of the stuff that we talk about as the soft stuff, the squishy stuff. That matters, but it's not as much. It doesn't matter as much as winning, the bottom line, achieving success, right? And so one of the things in 2017, you were at a Google and did Google Talk, and I know I'm bringing you back a couple of years, but I went back and I thought, oh, I love this stuff. One of the things that you talked about, this idea of, I think it was honey Empire.
Honey Empire.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
And then I love the way you broke that down. And so you broke it down kind of on a flip chart. Yes. But I don't know if you can remember it, and if not, I'll help you along. But you did such a great job of simplifying it. And it was formulaic, but at the same time, heart-centered. So I'd love for you to just talk through that with people that are listening right now and watching.
Yeah. There's a whiteboard behind me, but I'm not going to open it. Yeah. Honey Empires is our philosophy at Vayner Media. And we operate from a place of 51% honey and 49% empire. We are a business, right? So you do need the 49%. However, we're very much people over profit and have that belief in us. You're not going to lose your job because we lost a client. We are putting people first. And so what you're referring to is when I wrote on the whiteboard a little bit of an equation of how I build strong, empathetic teams, high-performing teams. And on the left-hand side, there is, you've got connection, which we all know is extremely important as we are humans and wired to connect. And then you've got trust, and then you've got empathy. So feeling for each other, as we've just talked about. And these things happen overnight, in an instant, in a year. They're all fluid. And if you get that right, all right, job done. That's amazing. And that's really kind of the feeling side, the honey side, the more of the heart-centered side. And then that, I believe, can lead to teams that are rooted in autonomy, accountability. So these are more kind of like more guiding principles, if you will. Autonomy, accountability, longevity, resilience. And if you wrap all that up and you put a nice bow on it, you get like co-ownership, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is more of we'll call it the empire. That is more of the heart, the honey, opening yourself up, being vulnerable, standing up, being everything that we talk about when it comes to EQ. And then that leads to more of the empire of as I said, kind of like the doing, the output. And for us, if we get all that right, and boy, oh boy, it's a lifetime. That equates to teams that are rooted in values and purpose, but also speed. Speed is an enormous KPI for everyone, not only just our company, but every company today. So that's how I equated it, and I'm happy to draw that up and send it out on the interwebs later. But
oh, I love that. Yeah, when you walk through it, so anybody who hasn't, you can go look up Claude Silver and pop up at the Google Talk for 2017 and watch it in full. It's really rich. Okay, so one of the things you mentioned actually on there too is, and I don't want to, you'd have to speak for him, but you did mention it in this talk, was this idea of Gary saying, you think Gary thinks of himself as HR because he's people focused. How hard is that for someone in a role like him, leading an organization that has now 800 employees worldwide, a global digital agency, and anybody like them, people that are overseeing 80,000 employees, people who are seeing 8,000 employees, that idea of striking that balance, of seeing themselves as the chief heart officer separate from HR and being responsible for that people first philosophy. What do you think about that balance?
Well, so for me, there is no other way. So it's easy for me to say, what my thoughts are. And I recognize I'm in such an incredible position because I work for and with a CEO that is people first and he's heart focused. To answer the question and then refer back a little bit to the last question, which is, this heart is being kind of like ooey gooey and soft. The heart is our strongest muscle in our body. It's an organ. It beats, I don't even know how many times per minute, right? Someone else smarter than me can sense that. But heart is the central operating system of any human being, and it is a necessity. And human beings are the central operating system of any organization, even the organizations building the AI and the robots that will take over our jobs at some point. So both are needed. You need human and you need heart. And heart doesn't mean, if this isn't Valentine's Day and it's not a Hallmark card. I mean, the heart is such an essential organ. It is having heart is, I think, the most noble thing one can do, because it takes an enormous amount of humility to not be me first. I believe it takes an enormous amount of understanding humans, and that we want to belong, that we want to connect, that we want to feel, that we want all these things that you and I have talked about, that we want to matter, that there is possibility for us. It takes an enormous step in order to be able to provide for others. And that's what Gary does. We are both servant leaders. We are working for 800 people. 900 people. And that is, for me, that's an honor. And I believe it's an honor for him, or I don't believe he would do it. And so it is, I don't think it's for the faint of heart, no pun intended. I don't know if this is for everyone. I want to believe that it's for everyone, because I believe that if we all take a moment to really understand ourselves, and that, by the way, a moment meaning some years, to understand ourselves and how we tick, we can kind of come down from there.
So right now, I've got a beautiful little fireplace over there. Now it's one of those, it's not a actual wood burning one, but it still makes me feel cozy. And as I'm talking to you with these topics, I'm feeling I feel like I'm filled up by having this discussion. And I have my nice warm cozy socks on too. So let's just I'm gonna be honest there. So thank you for all of that. I think that's it's amazing to have everybody be able to get that. And I think it's interesting that you talk about it's an honor to provide, because I've had several people who are founders of companies that are scaling, maybe not as large as yours, but still doing quite well. And when I talk to them, they do have this feeling of a high feeling of responsibility. In some cases, they have family that might be actually working in their organization, and so they really feel like they're caring for the people that are under their leadership and having to take care of them. So I can see, if you look at it that way from the servant perspective, and even Howard Behar talked about this a few weeks ago when I had him on the live show, that if we are looking at ourselves as serving them and them not serving us, which in the traditional model, it is this idea of hierarchy, and these people down here serve these people up here, and they serve the customers, and we are up here are the ones that are getting the benefit. And so I love your philosophy of engaging people where they're at, and that the people that are the troops that are on the ground working with the clients, you're there to serve them, to make sure that they can get everything that they need out of the business. So
yeah,
and that's amazing.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, thank you for saying that. The name of the game for me at the end of the day, in my last breath, I would like to have been able to amplify joy and awareness. I'd like that to have been something that I touched in life, and reduce, if not eliminate, suffering. And this goes a much deeper conversation we can have another time. But I just we're complicated folk, aren't we?
Yes, we are. But I think that's, again, having the people see that part of you, I think is still so critical. Because I kind of feel like, so this kind of leads me to that next one, which is, people, again, thinking about heart, or thinking about people like us that lead with heart and look at people first. That doesn't mean we don't have difficult conversations, that we don't have course correcting conversations with those that are under our charge. And so on that Google Talk, you actually did reference an example then, but you probably have others. And then this one was particularly about someone you were trying to hold the mirror up in front of this person. They weren't seeing things a particular way, and you wanted that person to see it, and you had to kind of lay it out for them. And so if it's not that example, I'd love for you to share one where it was that way. You had to you had to have a difficult conversation. You had to put the mirror up. And how did you do it? And how did it turn out?
Yeah, I mean, to be quite honest, I think I'd probably have a conversation like that once a day. So my conversations, while I'm having one-on-ones, are not always going to be, I'm probably not promoting joy at that moment. We are looking at roadblocks together, or I am helping them identify a roadblock from a place of humility, because I am not the king or queen of their life. I don't want to ever be perceived that I'm in some ivory tower knowing what to say to them, but knowing how we want people to function and feel and treat other people at Vayner Media, it's very important that I'm able to have radical candor conversations. And I wish there was another term for bad cop, very nice day off, another good cop, bad cop, but bad cop meaning like having that brave conversation where I need to say to someone, and yesterday was case in point, that the behavior that they're exhibiting, while I understand it is coming from their belief that they have been wronged, it is spreading out onto a floor and seeping everywhere. So the behavior of fear and being much more, this person is very restrictive, very much a no, very much a you did this wrong. That's just not gonna jive here. That's not what we're not pointing out what you did wrong. We want to give you some observations of how things could have gone better seamlessly. That conversation could have been easier. But so I think for me, it was pointing out that while I understand that you are triggered in this situation, meaning like I'm empathetic, I get the experience that you had in your past that is now being triggered in this situation. That's empathy. Mm-hmm. And I want to hold that, and I'm happy to talk to you through that. The behavior that's coming from that isn't going to work here in this organization. So we need to talk about what you want to do. I don't want to make a decision for your future and your career unless I absolutely have to. Mm-hmm. So it's something that you're able to look at and transform. Are you able to transform a dialogue that you're having with this other person or not. And if not, that's okay. We're going to help you on the out. But for here, and especially the role that this person plays, like that cynicism and just, I don't know, I don't even know the word for it, judgment isn't going to, it's not helping anything here. It's actually harming. So that conversation I had yesterday, for example.
I always, I actually, I listen to myself times after the podcast and I hear all the funny sounds I'm making because I know I'm making them now too. So those who are out there in the universe, David Stannard and Maribel and Mike Vacanti and Phil Burgess, all these people, when you're hearing me making all these funny sounds, most of it is because there's all these light bulbs. Boop, 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 boop. They're just popping all over the place. And I'm not sure if those of you who are out there are also having those same impacts where you're thinking about maybe a time where you were that way or the time where you failed to do a particular thing that Claude's talking about. That's the whole benefit of this, is that we have these open conversations. We're all in a learning process. We're not experts in this. Kind of drives me nuts when people put down. Sometimes I put, like, I have it on something and I'm like, I don't think I would have put the word expert. But when we say that, because expert then makes it seem like you can't learn anything else. And I'm learning every day. I'm learning during this call right now. And I think, I bet you do you feel like you learn even when you have to have those difficult conversations with people? Are you learning during that time?
I watch what comes out of my mouth. I'm very mindful of what comes out of my mouth, and I don't get it right every single time. There's no way. So I'm learning. I'm giving myself feedback all the time, sometimes a little bit too much. And I'm learning. I mean, I had a wonderful conversation here yesterday with our head of analytics, and she blew me out of the water. And I kept on saying to her, I need you to put this in layperson's terms. Like, I'm so fascinated with what you do, and I don't get that. I don't get it. I need, but I want to get it. I'm so interested in how you're building this team that is so loyal to you.
Oh, I love that. I think that just having that consistent learning and desire and eagerness, and people see that in you. I think people are impressed by that. They're like, wow, someone like you wants to learn from someone like me. Like, and you're not thinking of it that way because you're like so down to earth that you're not thinking of it that way. But that person's like, oh, Claude's taking the time to she wants me to walk her through this concept that I thought would be boring to most, but she really wants to know it.
I mean, I know this much, right? I know this much, and this is from the decades that I've been living. I mean, imagine there's so much more to live and so much more. Even on my Twitter page, I think the backsplash on my Twitter page is that Michelangelo quote that says, "I'm still learning." There'll never be a day where I pray.
I feel the same way, and I'm glad that you're on this journey with me as a leader with heart. For those who had listened, if you haven't already listened to the podcast where Claude and I talked, this is episode 55. So it's been some months. I think I'm at like episode 85 now. So we're a little far ahead. You can go listen to things that actually aren't even really related to what we're talking about here because we had a different conversation. But if you go to either Apple Podcast or Spotify or any place you might listen, you can hear more of her brilliance. Because I know you can see right now why I asked her to come on this live show. There's so much authenticity here. And I think that if we can have more leaders that are modeling both you and Gary, because again, none of us are perfect, but I think the idea that, he's so centered on this, that he put you in that place where you're at and you are there to make sure you continue to check that culture says a lot. So if you're in a position as a leader to be the one who, make sure there's a check in place and that you're constantly seeing yourself as responsible for HR, as the key resources in your organization, you're responsible. You are that person. And instead of pointing to someone else, actually saying, I choose, I get to own this and not to be pointing fingers at people. I think that it's kind of critical. I would love to hear, do you have any closing messages for any people who are looking to maybe grow in empathy or help others grow in empathy?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So thank you. I believe that in order to grow in empathy, we must be self-aware. And self-awareness is a lifelong journey. So I think one must be committed to figuring their what out. And we all have stuff to figure out what blocks us, why we are triggered, where does that come from. And I'm not saying take a tour down memory lane, but understand what motivates you and why you are kind of structured and organized the way you are, and have compassion there. And then bringing in this idea of having compassion for others and being able to, I think that's just job number one, just being a kind person. And then, step into the shoes in terms of um, expand yourself so that you have an interest in what others are going through or have gone through. You have an interest. That's how you know it's not fake.
Mm.
And ultimately, there's such a flow. There's such a flow when you start to unpack yourself and start to reach out and want to be in service of or provide something to another person. You just know when it's right. It just feels right. For me, I actually get chills on my face, when it's just like this magical moment, which is often with people.
I love it.
Yeah. And speak from the heart. I mean, our heart is it's there for many reasons, but it knows the truth. So speak from the heart. And if you need help doing that, reach out. There are those of us here that actually care and can guide you through that.
I love that. I see people, somebody on here says, are you hiring? I'd be saying the same thing if I was looking for a job. I would so be wanting to work for her, wouldn't you? Claude is amazing. I'm trying to see if there's any questions and make sure that I'm not missing any of those. I think people are mostly just making comments about how you're really spot on. And we're talking about empathy and the idea of is it innate or not. And I think we talked and touched on some of that. We do both think that it can be, but the prerequisite to all of that is that you have to care. You have to care first. You have to care deeply before you can even think of like, how do I actually move to the place where I can be more empathetic to others, right?
Heather, I'd say that you can't hack your way. You can't hack your way to empathy. And we all want to hack right now. We all want to hack time, hack our calendar. I'm right there. I want to hack, blah, blah, blah. I want to time travel. But you can't hack actual empathy. You have to show up. Got to be there.
Love it. That's going to be, I'm going to be putting that somewhere. Can't hack empathy. I love it. Well, this has been amazing. Again, I think you and I could just talk forever. And I'm telling you, we're going to have to meet here sometime. I don't know if you're in Colorado or New York. I was almost going to be there in November, but when I get there next time, I'm going to find you. You have to be there. Even if we can meet in a street corner somewhere to give you a hug, because two sisters all over the place. Yeah. So
I appreciate you so much. I appreciate the work you're doing. And thank you for having me on your show today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, dear. And thanks everybody for joining. Hopefully you'll pass this along once the recording is saved in LinkedIn.